We're just gonna jump into it. We're having a conversation off camera about the nature of poetry right now as an art form and how it's growing externally, like, you know, towards the mainstream, and also internally as its own community. So we were talking about a mainstream online poetry platform that has a great way of effectively, you know, sharing poetry to a lot of people, but there's some issues with the way they go about it, and they're kind of problematic. So just give me like your jump off opinion on on the way that poetry is going right now.
Right. So I'm gonna, in terms of online poetry, I'm gonna quote Jolade Olusanya. I'm gonna paraphrase him in it because I can't remember the quote and I don't want to butcher it.
Yeah.
Something like it's poetry is the only art form where you'll cut yourself on stage and you'll be applauded for bleeding so well, or something along those lines. It's the exploitative nature of just like of seeing pain being performative in it, because it's affecting like the way the art form's perceived, the way people engage in it, the way people feel that they can approach it and be actually involved in creating poetry. Like I've had people come up to me at the end of nights and be like, oh yeah, I've wanted to write, but I don't feel like I can because I haven't experienced enough pain. And I'm like, what kind? Yeah, literally, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's very, very dangerous because people now think like you must have had your family wiped out in Nagasaki to be able to put pen to paper. Like, it's bad. And it's because people are getting applause when they should be getting therapy. Like, it's really, it's really bad. Like, they're not, how can you, and then, especially in slams and that, when people are like, they're involved in the poem, they're living it, and it's like, how can you do that to yourself? How can you do that to your spirit? That's not healthy.
This is something that I struggle a lot with, in the way that, especially slams now, there's a way to interact with slams where you sort of protect yourself and you say, this is a parlor game to draw people in and to make sure that, like, you know, there's a bit of competition aspect, but this is not how I will judge myself totally. You know what I mean? There's, you know, the poetry world is bigger than slams. But I find that because of the way that online poetry is so popular and so widely shared and so, for want of a better term, viral, people can think that it's the only way to perform poetry or the only way to interact with poetry. And that is really dangerous when it is so, like, open. You hear people talking about the most hard experiences they've had, the most real, like, you know, like you say, people, you know, therapy poetry is also, it's a bit of a derogatory term, but it's for, you know, a type of poetry where they're getting out things that they need to write out.
It's
and then to have that judged, man, to have that judged and you know, like, graded in this very, very curt way, I have real problems with it, because it leads to a culture where, like you say, you get applauded for bleeding in a certain way, and it's not even well or not well. Every slam is different. Judges, audience judges, panel judges, whatever. A different room, a different crowd, a different day. You can get different responses. But if you've put yourself into that poem and all of a sudden you get slated for it, what's that going to do to your mental health? What's that going to do to your self-esteem, to your self-image? I find it really difficult, but not to be one-sided. A great thing that online poetry can do right now is just reach people, man. Like, it's so, the landscape's totally open. Just before the last election in this country, the Labour Party commissioned 3 or 4 UK poets who are, like, known or in the scene to perform pieces for them, and they got, you know, shared hundreds of thousands, blah, blah, blah. But, like, the whole point of this is that it's so immediate. The thing I love about poetry is that you can meet somebody right where they are initially. One opening line and you're there. Like, I wanted to get your opinion on, effectively, like, basically, well, we're going to go huge question and pare it down. If poetry is going to become mainstream, and if poetry is going to become, you know, a mainstay in everyone's life, how do we, as poets, make sure that we're the ones in control, or should we even be the ones in control of how it's shared and how it grows? Basically, if poetry is going to be mainstream, how's it going to happen?
I think poets need to be in control. If not poets, then people directly involved in the art form and in the field and like in the world. It's like basically so poetry, right, has been about for time. Everybody's engaged in poetry. Like poetry is probably one of the oldest forms of like expression, storytelling and all that. So like I was gonna use hip hop as an analogy, because hip hop, even though like there is that poetic aspect, it's not been around forever. It was invented in like the it was basically invented in the 70s, innit? But it's then been taken over where you've got like MOBOs now. It's called music of black origin.
Yeah.
I'd say no more in it. I don't need to go any deeper into that.
Black origin is a little bit wider than what you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Black origin, but then like, fine, where are the black folk? Like, you know what I mean? So obviously they're there, but it's not being controlled by the people that generated the genre, that are actually doing the content. You still got, it's being owned by essentially pop, and now it's gone mainstream. There's cross-pollination's good, innit? But there's a fine line between cross-pollination and bastardization. And I'm all cool with like wherever it goes, you can like it, you can not like it, but are the people involved in it and engaged in it the ones leading it to evolve, or is it being manipulated by external forces, by commercial forces and all that business, which is why I'm worrying, because then you got the qualities then affected. And I'm not even talking about quality in terms of like writing well, but quality in terms of the authenticity. And yeah, like...
So how do we ensure that poets are in positions of power within, not only within our own community obviously, but within, you know, the wider worlds of what you would call the entertainment industry or wherever poetry is placed? Because that's one of the things that I find that's so great about poetry, is that it can be anywhere, because it, as a nature of expression, just comes out wherever people are. And so, you know, but how do we make sure that the poetry is not used to detriment the actual work and the actual products? I say products, I mean, you know, pieces. It's difficult. So like, here's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
I think that as with all things, to make sure that the power is shared out, you need to ensure that everybody who is involved understands that the point is not the points, the point is the poetry. The point is not the money, the point is the poetry.
Exactly.
The point is not the opportunities or this, that and the other, however glitzy or glamorous the rewards may be. If the poetry is not good, then the whole thing is falling apart. And I have a lot of struggle with effectively poetry as advertising, because I will take it away from nobody. You know, you can do what you want obviously with your time, and you know, I would not denigrate anybody for doing that. But luckily enough the nationwide adverts aren't changing the content, the poetry. They're very much saying these are ideals that we would like to aspire to, and here are some poets talking about that. But it's a very small step from there to what you would call, like, you know, a large multinational corporation that's a lot more explicitly interested in money, to say we would like you to write a poem about these values so that we can sell that. I mean, the way to change that is to make sure that poets are not only involved in the creative side but also in the business side. That's what I'm trying to get to. There needs to be professional practitioners of poetry established in the field.
Exactly. It comes down to a matter of like, rate yourself. You know what I mean? Like, if as a poet you need to understand the value of what you're doing, the value of your art form, not just because there is a fine. If we're talking about fine lines, there's also a fine line between, you know, it's not about the money and I'm doing it for the love, and deliberately putting yourself in a position where because you've rejected the financial administrative, because basically as a writer, as a freelance writer, as a poet, as an artist, whatever, you are your own business, you are your own brand, you are like the center of whatever, you know what I mean, where someone else can be selling toothbrushes or whatever. You're selling yourself and you're selling your artwork. There's a fine line between being like, it's not about the money, but then being so it's all about the art, that you end up being put in a desperate situation where you're ready to be exploited.
Downplaying yourself and like not valuing yourself as an artist properly. Exactly.
And even that comes down to like doing like gigs for free and not being like, no, this is my rate. It comes down to doing workshops and being willing to like share the skills that you spend potentially decades developing, just giving that out for free or for pennies. Like, if once we like accept our market value as poets and we're ready to like be on that, then obviously other people, they have no choice but to respect it, otherwise they won't get the services. Because now there's the mentality of, okay, like you can charge me like you can say you're doing it for a grand, but I know someone that's gonna do it for travel expenses. So you either get the gig or you don't.
I think there's to wrap that up and to build on that, to talk about knowing your own value as an artist. Paula Varjak has this thing called Show Me the Money, and it's her show, and she's been touring it for a couple of years now, and I saw it at Edinburgh a couple of years ago, and it's just the most brilliant way to blast open the doors of transparency here. I think the way to bring it back to like, you know, making sure that poetry grows in the way that us poets would like to see it, there's people creating the work and trying to value ourselves. It's about transparency, I find. It's about making sure that everyone knows what's happening, people know the value is nice, and the companies know that we know what we're doing. I think that, you know, if there was a silver bullet answer, I would say that transparency, openness, honesty is the key. And apart from that, the work will always be there, poets will always be there, the work will always be created. But there needs to be transparency in the professionalism of it to make sure that nobody's losing out and that we're not undercutting each other.
Exactly.
I would preach that to the high heavens until my throat goes hoarse. Yeah, indeed. And I think that's roughly all the time we have, isn't it? Mad love to Tyrone for filming this, and to our studio audience. Give me a cheers to your audience. Couldn't help it. Peace.